I'd like to begin proceedings by acknowledging the traditional owners of the unceded lands on which our centre is located, the Wurundjeri Wurrung people. So we pay our respect to elders past, present and future. And I think we can all agree, certainly in our centre, that as a community of researchers and teachers and students, we're really privileged to work and learn every day with our Indigenous colleagues and partners, and also to be on the beautiful lands of the Parkville campus that they have taken such great care of for us. So today we have the pleasure of hosting Associate Professor Samir Deshpande and Dr. Bo Pang. So a bit of an introduction, bear with me on both of them, and then I'll give them the floor. So Samir is the Deputy Director of Social Marketing at Griffith, based up in Queensland, within the Department of Marketing. So he has over 2 decades of experience in marketing for a better world, publishing in leading academic journals and consulting for government and non-profit organisations across many countries, including India, Canada, Singapore, Australia and the US. Bo is a senior lecturer at Swinburne with a PhD in social marketing and behaviour change. Before joining Swinburne, Bo actually served as Deputy Director at Social Marketing at Griffith. And if you came a few minutes before we joined, we noted that Bo obviously hated the amazing Queensland weather and decided to come down for a brutal Melbourne winter. So Bo specialises in the design and evaluation of programs for positive change and impact. And we're all really excited to be hearing from both of these amazing speakers on co-design, which we know is sort of a hot topic and something that a lot of our stakeholders have expressed an interest in learning more about. So before I do hand over to our speakers, a bit of housekeeping. Please pop any questions in the Q&A. You'll notice that the chat function is disabled. So if you have any questions, put it in the Q&A. You can do this at any time during the session. But what we will do is we'll work through the questions at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to be quiet now and hand over to Bo and Samir. Thank you both.
Thank you very much for inviting us. Before we start our session on the co-design workshop details, I do want to also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land here in Brisbane and there in Melbourne on which we are meeting, and I pay respect to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I do want to acknowledge and thank Dr. Ashley Thomas and Professor Michelle Jonjan-Ellis at the Melbourne Centre for Behaviour Change for inviting us and organising this webinar. We also want to acknowledge and thank Professor Sharon Rundle-Thiele. She's the director of our center. We use some of her slides to create today's presentation because she is one of those pioneering members in our center who initiated the co-design workshops, and she has a lot of experience in this regard. So what we have done is we have kept it simple. We want to cover 2 major aspects of co-design. One is the 7-step co-design process, which Dr. Bo Pang will cover. He will not only give us the definitions and details about every step, but also give us examples from his own experience on how he has used these steps and implemented the steps in conducting co-design workshops. And then followed by that, I will come back and basically present an example of a case study of an initiative, a co-design initiative that me and Bo conducted just recently in an effort to explore ideas to reduce light pollution in the coastal communities of Queensland, especially Southeast Queensland, with a clear intent to restore turtle conservation. All right, over to you, Bo. And I will manage the slides. So yes, please tell me when to change the slides.
Sure, thanks, Samir, and thanks, Michelle, for the warm welcome. I'm very, very excited to be here today to talk about co-design. Throughout my career, I had the privilege of leading over, I think, 100 co-design sessions with more than 2,000 participants. So working with multiple sectors like governments, industries, NGOs, and of course, universities. So I think co-design is a very strong and effective tool to engage stakeholders, generate insights, and most importantly, creating effective solutions. But unfortunately, I don't think enough people understand or utilize co-design in their project. So I'm very, very, very happy to be here today to talk about co-design. So Samir, can you go to the next slide? So let's start with what co-design actually is. In my opinion, co-design is a specific form of co-creation. It is all about combining the collective intelligence and the creativity of both researchers and the participants during the design process, right? So I think the collaboration is key. When you bring a group of people into the session, of course, you get different perspectives, but co-design does more. Okay, so it brings what I call the 3 E's together. Okay, so different expectations, expertise, and experiences. So to create solutions that are more innovative and inclusive. So I think co-design is not just about designing for people, rather designing with people. Okay, and Samir, can you go to next, please? So why co-design, right? So the benefits of co-design has been widely documented and proven, as you can see here from the list at the left. So when stakeholders feel a sense of ownership over the process and the final product, it is very obvious they're going to be more likely to engage deeply and adopt the solution more proactively. The sense of this kind of investment, I think, leads to a higher level of commitment and, of course, a more effective implementation. That's something we observed through our project as well. And if you can see the screenshot at the right, probably you have seen that the news already last week, right? So the Australian government has made a very significant move by committing to co-designing the NDIS with the disability communities. I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. And if you take a closer look at what they're proposing in the documents online, so their approach and the philosophy are exactly what we advocate in co-design. But of course, you know, I think we can all agree the real test will be in the execution, right? So we will have to wait and see how or whether it will truly improve what they are promising in the coming years. And this is definitely some outcomes everyone is hoping for. Samir, go to the next, please. So there is a lot of confusion around co-design, especially the differences between co-design and focus groups. And that's why I put a table here to give you some insights around that. So for me, I think especially a lot of people when they are claiming they're running co-design sessions, which in reality they are literally just conducting focus groups, right? So co-design is really about actively involving participants as co-creators, as you can see here in the table. So they're not only just giving feedback, they are helping to shape the entire design process, right? So this is very different from focus group, where participants are more likely respondents to give you ideas. So the two methods, of course, differ across different several areas, like purpose, participant involvement, approach, outcome, and scope. But I think the most important part is actually the outcome of the co-design, which is one or more market-ready solutions. And that's, I think, what sets co-design apart. So Samir, please go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, I think there's a slight delay in reflecting on the slide change. Bear with me. So as you can see here, this is the 7-step co-design process I'm going to walk you through. There are quite a few other co-design processes proposed by researchers and institutions, like Professor Elizabeth Sanders from the US. I think she's with Ohio State University. It's a very big figure in the co-design space. I think UK Design Council has some processes. McKinsey has their own processes as well. But the one here, the 7-step co-design process, in my opinion, is actually the most comprehensive and practical approach. So I'll walk you through on that. Next slide, please. So let's start with the step number 1 and 2, resourcing and the planning. So resourcing is all about gathering what you need to make the co-design process successful, right? So this includes securing the budget, assembling a talented team, finding a skilled facilitator, and identifying key partners who can contribute to the project. In terms of planning, sometimes we refer that as the fuzzy front end, right? So which normally is just coordinating logistics. But of course, I will provide a checklist later on this. But very important thing about co-design, about resourcing, Samir, if you can go to the next slide. So when we talk about resourcing, it's not just about the financial or human resources, right? So intellectual resources are equally important, if not more important. That's why there's actually a lot of research you have to do beforehand. So the chart you are seeing here shows 3 research activities our team generally conducted before we ran the co-design. Okay, so the first one is systematic literature review, which is trying to understand what solutions has been proposed before, what has worked and what hasn't, right? So those past initiatives will be used in the co-design sessions later. And the second one is expert interview, right? So we want to know a little bit more about the localized context. Is there any gaps or opportunities for the particular area of particular topic? And the last one is the broad audience survey, which is to understand the needs, preferences, and experiences of the final the public, the people, right, the end user. So all of these inputs fit into the co-design process. So Samir, please go to the next slide. There is another example, same example. So it's just to give you a bit of ideas about the amount of work you have to put into preparing for co-design, right? So what you see here is a Prisma chart of the systematic literature review for one of our co-design projects, okay? So as you can see, we literally reviewed more than 2,000 papers and gathered a total of 16 studies to inform the co-design sessions. So this is the amount of work you need to be mentally ready to put in when you're prepping for the co-design. Next slide, please. But all of this are actually, the whole purpose is trying to resourcing the ideas, right? Resourcing the research, resourcing what we can do. So we know we're going to walk into the session and we're going to find the most important discussions. We're going to get the most effective solutions out of there. So in terms of resourcing ideas, apart from reviewing the evidence base, here are the few more examples to show how you can do that, right? So I think the takeaway here is utilizing your experts and stakeholders, and most importantly, their networks to generate more ideas, so you are well informed on the topic before you walk into the session. Next slide, please. So this is the key questions in terms of logistics, right? So I think in terms of logistics, all general rules around qualitative data collection, co-design as part of qualitative data collection, right? So and the workshop and event organizations, all these general rules still apply. This includes, paying close attention to the climate environment, logistics and rooms arrangement, and setting ground rules here. Okay, and let's move on to step number 3, which is recruiting. And next slide, please. So recruiting, this is a very critical step, in my opinion, in the co-design process, because the success of your workshop depends heavily on who is in the room, right? So I will focus on what types of participants you need to invite. I think the rule of thumb here is you need to have a room of people from diversified backgrounds in terms of the 3 E's: expertise, expectations, and experiences, right? So the ideal number for each session is around 15 to 20. So you can still go higher or lower, but I think that's the optimal one. You can actually have a very rich discussion, but not overwhelm yourself when moderating. So there are actually a lot of frameworks and stakeholder mapping tools available online in terms of how to select and get the most diversified stakeholder in the workshops. But I will introduce two here. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the first one, as you can see here, is what, again, we're from marketing. So we're really talking about the segmentation. We're really talking about the customer segmentation and customer needs. So the first framework is called the customer segmentation framework. So it covers three major groups of people you want to invite into your co-design workshop, right? So the first group is what we call the progression. Those are the people who are ready to move forward, to embrace the future, who wants to change, who are empowered to do so. Okay. A second group is the connection. Those are the people who are who need support, advice, and partnership. So they have the motivation to do things, but they just don't know how. So we have to be there to give them a little bit more guidance. And the third type is what we call the control, right? So they are the people who need for stability and control. So generally speaking, they are more likely to be conservative and cautious. But in terms of the co-design running the session, you will want to have all three types of people in your workshop to design more inclusive solutions, because you want to have everyone's opinion on what's going to be the best for everyone, right? Next slide, please, Amir. So the second framework is actually from one of my previous projects. So what we did here is what is generally called the stakeholder mapping exercise, right? So we already have a list of stakeholders who have a vested interest in this particular topic, but we want to make sure they are mapped according to some kind of framework. So as you can see, this is actually my work with the Townsville City Council a few years ago. What we're trying to do here is trying to figure out how we can design solutions to promote energy conservation in the workplace. So you can see it's actually a lot of people are relevant into that context. But this table here is a 2x2 table, right? So we have two dimensions. One is the stakeholders' impact on the solution and the decision-making power. And we have high power and low power. And then we have another dimension, which is stakeholders' proximity to the implementation or influence, right? So then we have the near, we have far. By running this 2x2 table, we'll be able to have 4 groups of people to be invited into the co-design sessions. And of course, when we were running the sessions, we made sure we had at least one representative from each group to attend the workshop. Okay, next slide, please. So we talk about planning, we talk about recruiting, we talk about, once we got all this stuff set ready, so next step is actually run the session, right? So walk in the room with a group of people sitting there waiting for you. So what are you going to do first? This is what step 4 is for, is what we call sensitizing, okay? So this is a crucial step, I think, where we prepare the participants to engage deeply with the topic at hand, right? So the goal here is really to get everyone in the right mindset and ensure that all participants are on the same page before we start co-designing. So it is a 2-stage process, right? So we always start with some very generic questions or activities, but focusing on creating an environment that everyone feels ready to contribute meaningfully. So I provided a few examples here. As you can see, the warm-up activities, the word associations, but I'm pretty sure if you are a quality researcher, you can come up with quite a lot of your ideas too. So the stage 2 of this step, please, next slide, is the appraisal of past initiatives, as I mentioned earlier, right? So we talk about we're running the evidence-based review, we're running a systematic literature review, trying to find what has been done before. This is where we will be able to test all these ideas here. So we're going to give the list of past initiatives. We are going to ask the participants to appraise, to give feedback on that. So the reasoning of having this activity is to give the participants a better understanding of what has been done, of course, and identifying gaps and opportunities for improvement. So in reality, we normally provide about 8 to 10 because we don't want to overwhelm them, and we ask them to rank the ideas in terms of their preferences or their perceived effectiveness. So we basically ask the question: if this intervention is happening in your neighborhood, do you like it? Do you think it's going to work or not? Right. So the whole purpose of step 2, sensitizing, is really to prepare the participants to put more informed and creative contributions during the co-design process. Next slide, please. So facilitating, which is step number 5. So I think this is where the core activities of co-design take place. So this is where the participants move from preparation to active engagement in the creation process, right? So as you can see here, I list 3 key approaches. Normally we do, and we recommend you to do too. So the first one is telling. This means encouraging the participants to share stories, experiences, and knowledge, right? So it is to ensure that everyone has a clear understanding of the issues from different perspectives. So they always talk about what they think, what they can do, but it's going to be very quickly they find out, okay, wow, everyone's thinking very differently. There will be a lot of different opinions thrown around on the table. So that's a very key, like I would say, the light bulb moment for everyone in the session. So the second one is enacting. This is where the participants start to bring ideas to life through a series of activities like role-playing, simulation, or any other interactive methods, right? So it is a way to explore and test ideas in a, I would say, tangible way. And the last one is making. Okay, so this involves hands-on activities. We always give them the butcher's papers, scissors, sticky notes. We give them a lot of toys, props for them to play with. So they can start doing things like prototyping, sketching, or even building models. So this is about translating ideas into concrete forms. And then we are going to ask them to critique each other, to critique each table with each other's ideas and to try to build upon each other's ideas, right? So, and we ask them to do this very, very critically. And I think Samir can go to the next slide, please. And there are a few, I think, basic principles for this kind of facilitation. I think it's very good opportunity for me to share with you. So the first one is we guide, we don't lead, right? So the facilitator is there to the facilitator is not the one with all the answers, right? So we are, I think, merely a guide who helps draw all of the opinions from them, the ideas, the experiences from the participants. The second one is we should always focus on the participation, right? So it's really about encouraging active involvement and ensuring that everyone's voice is heard. The way people engage with the process often decides the quality of the outcomes. And the last one, of course, I think it's very straightforward, is stay neutral, right? So it means we don't take a particular position in the discussion. So we just want to get unbiased opinion, but not interfering with the discussion. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, for this slide, I think it takes a lot to be a good facilitator. I think this is just some quick tips for you to be mindful of, as this is some quick tips from my learnings over the years. I think the most important one is we should go beyond words, right? So we should always pay attention to body languages, to the facial expressions, to the vibes, to the emotions, and those are the data, important data too. And I always take notes on that. That is definitely one way to be effective facilitating. Next slide, please, Samir. Okay, we're getting there. So these are the last two steps, step 6 and 7, reflecting and building for change. Reflecting, I think it's really about taking a step back to analyze and consider the ideas generated during the co-design process, right? So, and building for change, I think it's really important. It is to capitalize viable solutions in collaboration with key stakeholders. And it is about turning ideas into actionable plans. And then we move on to the feasibility test, right? So think about the resourcing, the timeline, the challenges, etc. Next slide, please. Analyzing, I think I don't know who is in the audience here. So, but if you're a qualitative researcher, I think all these general rules about analyzing qualitative data still apply here. But generally, we do 3 types of analysis here. The first one is what we call mapping, as you can see. So we use data to create patterns, connections, and processes. The second type is clustering or grouping. So we group similar ideas together so we can see the consensus or divergence. And the last one is prioritization. So basically we rank them. We prioritize the ones, the ideas based on feasibility, based on impact, based on support. But of course, in reality, we always combine all 3 together to make sure all the insights are valued in the process. Next slides. I believe that will be my last slide. So the last slide I really want to talk about is really co-design is not always about starting from the scratch. As a matter of fact, one of co-design's key advantages is actually the ability to build upon what's out there already, right? And to leverage existing resources, networks, and ideas. It's really about making the most of what's existent and creating synergies and building community with better capacity. I think that's all I want to say. I will stop here and I'll pass down to Samir to showcase the case study.
Thanks, Bo. The very comprehensive discussion on the various steps, and it was good to hear your experience while explaining the insights and some of the experiences of being there on the field and doing the co-design workshops. So Bo and I received funding to co-design ideas, as I said before, to reduce light pollution, particularly in the coastal communities of Queensland, and ensure that the turtle hatchling season is protected and hence their population. I will not go into details of the actual issue. I will focus more on the process of co-design that we implemented while carrying out this initiative. And I've tried to highlight a few things to match the 7 steps. So some of the details I would not otherwise talk about if I was talking about the issue itself, but I'm doing so right now because the focus is on the process of co-design. So we received funding, and that's important because you need money to carry out such a project from the Department of Environment, Climate Change and Water of Government of Australia, and also a small funding from the Sunshine Coast Council. The objective was to conduct co-design workshops to create market-ready community campaigns, so behavior change initiatives in the 3 coastal towns of Bundaberg, Sunshine Coast, and Gladstone in Queensland. These are, of course, important sites for turtle hatchling activity. They are concerned. They have a very important and active team working in the respective councils, and they were our representatives as part of the team. So the organizing team included Bo and me. We had 2 research assistants. They were paid for their work, but we got very active participation from the 3 councils. And we were kind of very clear with them when approaching them and applying for the funding that their participation was necessary. Their cooperation was almost required to make this project a success. So let me present to you the 3 steps or 3 stages. One is the before co-design, preparing for it, then actual co-design, what we experienced there, and then the post co-design activities. So after we received the funding, as Bo had suggested, we hired an RA, Pamela Ruiz, to conduct a rapid evidence review of interventions, programs, and initiatives to prepare a list of efforts that have attempted to reduce light pollution and promote turtle hatchling season to conserve their population. The list was shared with the council representatives. And also, so while finalizing that list, we also included the past initiatives of their own. And in total, then we came up with a list of 15 initiatives in this regard, which we then brainstormed in activity 2 of the co-design workshops, which I will cover in a few minutes. So the point I want to make is we met each council representative member 2 times. One was to inform them about the kind of co-design activities we'll carry out, the way Bo explained to you all right now. We also brainstormed ideas of what to discuss, how to discuss the amount of time to allocate to each one of those activities. The more we can discuss the details and more clarity we have and agreement we have, the better the co-design workshop will run. And we also then later on met again to discuss the logistics of organizing these workshops. What role the council representatives played? It was twofold. One was they helped us promote participant recruitment through their social and digital channels. They are a council, so they obviously have established channels of communication with their residents. They also helped us put in touch with a few community groups who try to reach out to their members. And then they also helped us with booking the venues because the workshops are happening in their neck of the neighborhood. They also arranged and sponsored the food, and they helped us set up the rooms, small details like tables and screen and all those things while we were getting ready for the workshop. While the 3 of us, me, Bo, and the research assistant, Lawrence, we managed the rest of the activities. So let's get into the co-design workshop itself. So the data was collected in 3 councils on these dates towards the end of last year. It was normally conducted, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, but we conducted these workshops on Thursday evenings and Saturday mornings, again, to see the convenience of the participants. We were well prepared, as Bo suggested, because we have been doing co-design for a long time. So we got the necessary supplies, which is very important. Can't emphasize much more on how ready we need to be with all kinds of supplies, so that once our participants get into the fold of doing things, and we want to capture all that they say and they write. So we need all those relevant supplies. So we facilitated the session. Bo was the facilitator for these sessions, but we had people who took notes, which is very important. We also had observers in the room. Plus, so these are neutral observers. Plus, we had people who we collected written notes of the attendees. The council representatives not only helped us set up the room, but they also attended the sessions as observers. So here's a quick split of attendees per session. So in total, we organized 11 sessions across the 3 councils. Bo had mentioned that ideally the attendees should be 15 to 20 people. Well, that's good in theory. In reality, there was some highs and lows, as you can see in Kolam in Sunshine Coast, for example, or even in Kalundra in Sunshine Coast, got far less than 10 people. And sometimes Moore Park Beach in Bundaberg, we got 19, which was good. So you have to settle with what you get and run the workshops. So in total, in general, on average, each session lasted for 2 hours. So 11 sessions, we got a tremendous amount of data and insight from our respondents. We got 109 individuals in total, 40 males, 69 females that represented diversified backgrounds. These residents, as Bo said, were representatives of a variety of sectors. And that's important, as Bo has highlighted before. It was important that as many people we can get in the room that represent diversified opinions around this topic is important. Now, Partly, it depends on how aggressively you recruit, and also it depends on the appropriateness of recruitment, whether you reach the right channels, right media, so that you reach the right kind of people. And again, details, every participant received $50 for their participation. We did serve snacks and beverages to keep them not hungry. So because that's important for them to contribute good ideas. All right, so I will again only focus on the process, and I will only focus on Sunshine Coast, on the various steps we took through the process. Needless to say, we followed the same process in Bundaberg and Gladstone, but we don't have time to go through each one of the council findings and steps. So at the workshop, at the very start, as Bo was talking about telling, Bo was very clear in informing that the workshop is divided into 3 major steps. Understand their perceptions about turtles and light pollution in their area, to generate critical insights about past initiatives, and to co-design ideas for the next steps. We call these 3 steps as curious conversations, appraisal of past initiatives, and proposing new solutions. And again, Bo had suggested how we do that incrementally across time. So the objective of the first activity was to make them comfortable in the room. They are meeting strangers, so it's important that you break the ice through slightly similar, seemingly simple conversation, followed by getting into the actual critical insights or analyzing of past initiatives, followed by the nectar or the juice of the real discussion, which is to propose new ideas for the next steps. So in the first activity, we asked them to introduce themselves, especially their background, their experience, their relationship with the topic, what experience they've had with turtle population, and of course, life at the beach, life in coastal communities, and then some word association and some brainstorming activities of what comes to their mind when they think of a beach and turtles at night. And then slightly warming them up to the topic, we got into the biggest challenge that they think they would face if they were to reduce light pollution in Sunshine Coast. As I said, I will not dive deep into the actual insights, because that's not the point of it. But I wanted to show that based on their first activity insights, we grouped their discussion into 2 major themes. One was related to ecosystem impact, and the other was related to the negative effect of urban development. We also came up with a list of what was good observations about what they said, what was working in terms of reducing light pollution, and what were some of the challenges, what was the problem, the bad observations of what's stopping the light pollution, the effort to reduce light. All right. Then the second activity, where we spent 20 minutes, was on appraising past initiatives. So remember, we had come up with that evidence review of with the 15 initiatives. That initiative list was now shared with the participant. What we did was we created a card for each initiative, and those cards were kept on the table, and they were told to pick the top 3 cards according to their understanding. So you can see on the right, there's a lot of discussion going on around the table of what could be the top 3 ideas. Every table was told to come up with those top 3 ideas. And then there was a joint discussion around it. And so I'm just showing a very busy table here, but basically it shows for each city council what were the top 3 ideas. As you can see, there was a lot of consensus across councils on what were the top ideas. And then we summed them up and tallied them to then come up with the top ideas. It was important for us to know which were the top or the most favored ideas, because that was going to feed into then integrating these ideas into the idea that they want to go after in the future. So in general, you can see just again, highlighting the process here, that we realized that education on light pollution was the most favored idea, and something like Lights Out campaign was the least favored idea. And then finally, the last activity that we spent the most amount of time, 30 minutes, was to generate new ideas. So every group was given 5 minutes to present, in the end, to present their idea for 5 minutes and explain their idea to the group. Specifically, they were asked to answer 6 questions. What is the desired outcome of this priority action that they are proposing? What actionable steps they should be taking? Who needs to be involved? The right people. What are the required resources they need if they were to design and implement this idea? What kind of capacity or training building they need to ensure that the idea was successfully implemented, and how would you go about creating awareness and engage others? So we kind of coaxed them to focus on 3 ideas, so that they at each table, so that they could, if they were not sure about one idea. But later on, they were asked to integrate that. And so, sorry, that's one example of one of those 3 ideas. For example, they had an idea of adopting a beach. And so they came up with all these notes that we have captured here on the desired outcomes they would expect, actionable steps they would want to take, who should be involved, what resources they need, what capacity they would expect for successful implementation, and how would they create awareness and engagement with others. So as you can see, lots of notes and thoughts were shared by the participants, which we captured and we have shown them here. And then once they had explored and brainstormed the 3 ideas, we asked them to integrate that into one major initiative across the room that we felt that we could definitely take it forward. And so again, the same kind of topics they were asked to use to now this time think of one major solution that they think per session that should be taken forward and implemented. So again, we had, let's say, 3 sessions in Sunshine Coast. We got 3 major ideas, one from each session. And that has been a wonderful wealth of information that has helped us a lot to think of, and help the council to think of what can be done next. So again, all that resulted in some major key insights. Again, not getting into those insights here because that's not the point here. But what's important to highlight is many of these ideas are surprising, or they're enriched. They have some nuanced, incremental insights that were not available before the co-design workshops were conducted. And that resulted in a bunch of recommendations that we felt were, and especially the city councils who were very happy and excited with this co-design experience. They felt that this was not something that they would have otherwise explored without the co-design. So very quickly, I realized we are really running out of time. That in terms of what we did post co-design was we had one debrief meeting with the, and that's very important. In fact, I always recommend after not only co-design, but even after workshop, focus group, that one should have a debrief right after you conduct the activity. We have just heard for 2 hours from the participants. Can we at least spend 15 minutes debriefing each other? What have we learned, each one of us? And it's important to capture those in the notes. That all then gets integrated into the bigger findings and bigger notes. We used that technique, and we shared these insights then with the council representatives who had helped us organizing the co-design workshops. We shared with them the insight summary and campaign recommendations, which has then resulted in creating a poster design. And in fact, we are currently designing these posters with the help of a graphic designer, which was part of our grant. And here's just one example. It is still in a draft stage. We are still getting the final approval from Sunshine Coast Council, but it gives you an idea of what it is. And we have been very clear with them that this is just a template. We're going to share the editable version of this poster with them. They are welcome then to use this in either print or in social media platform during the hatchling season to create awareness in the community. The season campaign normally starts in November and ends by early April. So we hope that these councils will take these ideas, create these campaign materials, and share it in their communities in this year, 24-25. We are now in the process of using these insights to get further grant money to basically pre-test these ideas with the same city councils And then we hope to implement, design and implement these behavior change initiatives and evaluate them to see if they succeed. And of course, as academics, we are currently in the process of publishing this information in a journal article. That's all. Thank you very much. We are sharing our email, so feel free to connect with us via email or on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you both. There's a few clapping hands happening. Obviously very well received. And like I said, co-design is something that our stakeholders often want to hear more about. So I'm sure they appreciate it. Like I said, please pop your questions in the chat. We've had a couple of questions already. So this question actually has come up twice. I think it's for you, Bo. Have you done any analysis for the optimal time or duration for co-design sessions?
I haven't done any analysis, like formal analysis, but I can tell from my experiences, I think 3 hours is definitely the maximum you want to go forward. Otherwise, you probably have to think about serving lunch, getting all this, so they can keep their sugar level high enough to contribute. But another way of doing that, for other projects, we definitely want a little bit more involved from the stakeholders. Is we just run group co-design sessions across multiple days. So we come in with first 3 hours, we have some good discussion. I go back, I analyze data, I design activity again, and we meet again next week. We do it again. But for each session, I think 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours will be the optimal time. Yeah.
Okay, so 2 to 3 hours. Great, thank you. Another question, I think, as well for you, Bo. Who are the facilitators during the activities? Are they part of the research team? Do you train them beforehand? Are they aware of the study objectives? So I think this is talking about bias and independence there.
That's right. Yes. So I'm the only facilitator in the workshop, but I do have, as Samir mentioned, the research assistant there to help me on the table discussion. So we broke them into smaller tables, and then I will be serving on the table, one table, and the research assistant serving on the other. So Lauren is a RA here, and she is a very trained, experienced quality researcher in the team. And yes, she is aware of she's actually part of the team who was in the planning stage.
Okay.
So
there's no need to...
Can I add then? Sorry, no, Michelle, you go ahead. You're saying
I was just going to say, is there no need to sort of have the facilitator be unaware of the objectives, I guess, is I think where this question is also coming from.
I was just going to say that I think it's important that the facilitator is aware of the topic. My bias, better to have an academic speaking, because they tend to come from a relatively more neutral perspective than someone who is a stakeholder who's involved in the community and doing the actual initiatives. So it's important that we have a person who is seemingly neutral and knowledgeable about the topic, because many questions come up from the participants that need to be answered. And it's important that some of the topic expertise is useful. Can I also add one more thing, which is it's important to have, if I'm going to use the word experts or knowledgeable people, as in experts in co-design, to be at every table. Because based on my own experience, participants look to you as a person to guide them. They are more than happy to explore ideas, brainstorm ideas, but they kind of get distracted by process. They might land up spending a bit too much time on one topic, or maybe one person is controlling the conversation. The main facilitator cannot be at every table. So you need kind of a sub-facilitator at every table who is as good as the facilitator to manage the conversation and encourage everyone to contribute.
Yeah, another thing I want to add on this, I think this question, I think it's quite common from the health medical research. We're talking about the unbiased facilitator not aware of the study objectives. But this is a very, I would say, very different nuanced approaches when you're sitting at the table. So many things can go wrong. So much rich data coming to your way without a proper facilitator sitting there and make sure that the topic's on track without having overall idea of what the project is going to, what kind of expected outcome we're looking for. So many things can go wrong.
Yeah. And how do you divide people into groups? So are you making sure that you're mixing stakeholders? Are you making more homogeneous groups?
Always. And that's the main difference between focus group and co-design. in focus group, we're expecting or hoping for homogeneity. In this case, we're actually hoping for diversity. And so many times, actually, unless you control it, people will congregate towards people that they know, and you want to separate that. So you want to actively separate them out and ensure that based on their initial conversation and introductions, they tell us, we might land up reassigning them tables so that they talk to people that are from different sector and learn from each other.
Yeah. And a question has been asked around authorship. So how do you manage authorship in a co-designed research project, particularly when you're creating work that is being created with community members for community members?
Great question. Samir, do you want to go first?
So normally, to be honest, community members don't expect authorship of publications. They are, and normally even, so the three stakeholders here, right? One is us, the academics who did the workshops. Then you have city council members who helped us with the workshops. And then there is community itself. Only 1 or 2 of our council members have shown interest in co-authoring publication with us, and we are doing that. But community members have not shown any interest or inclination for authorship. So far, whatever publications that have come out from various co-design workshops, that has never been a big issue.
Okay, great. And what advice would you have for working with stakeholders and participants with diverse literacy levels?
I can take this one.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant question. Yeah, so I think the rule of thumb here is again, we're from marketing, so we tend to use a simple plain language to communicate. So we couldn't control who is coming to the code. We cannot have this level of control, but we can't just exclude people because they don't understand jargons or academic terms. So there is actually a research talking about what's the best level for English to communicate. I think it's a year 9 is a language, year 9 level language we're going to use in co-design. But again, this is basically we are being, I think this is something we've been doing this for a long time. So that's why when we were designing the discussion guides, developing the questions and slides, probably you can see we try to use simple words. And every time we talk about the concepts or constructs or theoretical frameworks, we break them down. And most of the time, we don't even mention that. We do it, but as an underlying construct, we never mention that in the co-design sessions.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a good question, and that's why, to ensure that we don't use too much jargony language, we actually consult with the community members, the councils, to ensure that they are comfortable with the language. They are our brainstorming. They are our mirror, because they come from the community. They understand what kind of members are likely to attend the workshops. So, and they are not academics. So the organizing, the collaboration team is important to be consulted while designing the workshop content and the script.
Another quick story I want to share is actually I was running one workshop before. The participants actually came to me after the session saying, okay, they have been to quite other co-design sessions. They feel like all these university professors are very sitting high tables and trying to be elitist, but I'm the one who is actually coming in, really have a listen to what they're saying and figure out what we can do together to make things better. I think that's actually a very good reflection of why we want to keep it low key, keep it like a very natural, very I would say common language, plain language. So when we're talking to people,
Definitely. Do you have any other ground rules or specific facilitation process during the co-design workshop? Like, how do you balance between being outcome focused and being process focused?
I couldn't think about any ground rules that we should mention. All these ground rules for qualitative data collection still applies here. Generally speaking, we want them to have the point of give them a chance to talk, and it's probably very common when you're running this kind of workshop groups or co-design groups. So there's always some loud participants, always some quiet participants, right? So basically, it's a simple way of doing it. I probably people know that too, right? So it's my way is like, okay, this is very good point, Jim. What do you think, Jennifer? Right? So by doing that, I shut down the loud one and giving the attention to the quiet one to go through. So make sure everyone is comfortable with contributing. In terms of other ground rules, I don't know. Samir, do you have anything to add?
So I think in addition to what Bo has suggested, is it's important that we stay on track of what's the objective of each activity. So as long as we know that if we are in the first activity, we are trying to understand who you are and you stick to that, then even if a person goes, and we do get some, in this very project, we had a couple of people who are who are so committed to the topic and are so excited to be there that they want to jump into the topic and start discussing right from where, even if we ask them for their name and their affiliation. And so that's where we have to say, great idea, great thoughts. Can we postpone that discussion for activity 3, because that's the point plan for this discussion.
Yeah.
And that kind of keeps them in check, because otherwise they would take 15 minutes just to talk about their brilliant ideas that they want to be implemented.
Facilitating is definitely an art form. Quite a few more questions. How do you recruit stakeholders, particularly if you work in remote or low income contexts?
Through existing networks.
Yeah,
sorry, you go, Samir. Okay.
No, again, I think you need a team in place from the community where you're going to conduct the workshop, and they are your champions. They know whom to contact, how to contact them. And we have been lucky that perhaps we have always had a strong team in the community, wherever in Australia, and they have helped us recruit it. We never ran into that issue.
Anything to add, Bo?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think leveraging existing networks, and trust is actually the key here. So we can't just walk into some community we've never been to, set foot in my whole life, and expecting people to come up and talk to us openly and honestly. And it's actually through the stakeholders, through the partners, and they are the ones who, like Samir said, the champions to get in touch and get people to show up.
Absolutely. Do you use any behavior change theories? And if yes, how do you choose this theory, and how was it applied in this context? So I'm suspecting they're meaning the turtle context.
Samir, you go. We do have theories.
Yeah. So it depends. I don't think context matters. And that's the beauty of co-design, is the process is fairly agnostic to the context. And again, as you know, Michelle, theories are agnostic. That's what we claim to context. So some of our behavior change theories, we do use them to mostly to construct the analysis of past initiatives and to construct the new ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have certain concepts that are part of our theory of behavior change, we ensure that we translate them into simpler language. We don't use those terms, that language at all. So we'll never say the term like subjective norms. We will say who's popular and who's influencing you. It's important that we use the language that they understand. Those are the two activities: analysis of past initiatives and brainstorming ideas for the new initiatives. We use a theory of behavior change, and we look at the concepts and translate them into simple language.
Yeah, thank you. I'm aware of the time. We are just going to keep going with the last few questions. So we've got it on the recording. If people have to leave, obviously feel free to leave, and you can catch the answers to these questions when we post the video online. So the next question is, how do you measure efficiency of the co-design sessions? Are there any specific scales or parameters there?
I think to me, it's definitely the quality of the discussion. That's the only thing matters. And, even though I said it's going to be, optimum number will be 15 to 20, because that's the most likely number you're going to get good discussions and quality results. But the best one I have ever got is actually very small, like 4 people. We were, sipping coffees and having good chat. And it's actually getting the best results. I think that's when we can go deep into the topic and have the good discussion. So quality of the findings and discussions is definitely the only thing I'm looking for here.
And is there like a validated measure that people can use to assess quality, or is it more like a gut feel when you walk away, you go, that went well, that didn't go well?
Again, that's still the quality of data collection process, right? So it's always good to get a lot of things happening in the front end, especially when we're doing so much preparation in the beginning. So we we'll anticipate something gonna come to our way. We know some kind of answer will show up. So, that's why, when there's something happened and we're like, oh, wow, this is something we didn't capture through literature, through expert. That's a moment I think that's actually the golden time of the discussion. Of course, data saturation will kick in at some point, right? So when you're sitting there and you're not really getting any new insights anymore.
Yeah.
But that's when probably you should stop. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just emphasize, actually, the people you recruit makes a big difference. If they are diversified, they're coming from different places, the quality of data is definitely interesting. And if they are really diversified, there will be debates in the session. They don't agree with each other, but that's what you want. That's the first time that they're actually seeing each other face to face many times and talking to each other directly.
Yeah. Is there any training that you would recommend for a first-time facilitator, for someone who's looking to get into this space? What would you recommend? What resources, what training is there out there?
Brilliant question. I think the center is offering trainings. Samir, I'll pass on this to you.
Yeah, so our center does offer masterclasses on co-design workshops, and we do one day or 2 day full day workshops on, and we do have hands-on activities. But I think the best thing is the proof is in the pudding, right? So accompany someone who's doing it, sit through the workshops, learn from them, do some small activities, start managing a table discussion. Even managing a table is not very easy for an hour of discussion. And then you step up to become the facilitator.
Yeah. So getting an idea of what it's like. And just to remind people, Griffith, Social Marketing at Griffith would be hosting those masterclasses, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, great. So back to sort of the co-authorship around community members. In some areas it might be, or it could be actively encouraged. In others, we know that certain stakeholders really don't want to be co-authors on a paper, particularly if they're working for government and they're not allowed to do that. What would you recommend then, if anything, to sort of honour participants as co-designers in this space? Would you include an acknowledgement in the paper? How is there any way of sort of being able to manage that?
That's a very good question. So throughout our process, we haven't had any occurrences like mentioning or thanking, because I think we already done that through in the process, and we are giving them the $50 voucher that thank you. And another point is to say, like, a lot of people, they're coming here for the financial reasons because they want to get that voucher, and which is something we welcome, because we don't want someone coming with an agenda trying to disrupt all these discussions. So I think that's one we've been doing, and that's one has keeping everyone happy. But I don't know, to be honest. I don't know whether we should include them as acknowledgement. It could be a good act, but I feel like financial is more material reward we're giving, and we have already done that. Yeah, Samir, what do you think?
But no, but remember that we go through the ethics process, right? They actually give us informed consent. So we have an ethics approval from the university. Yep. Every participant is actually doing reading the consent, giving it consent, and reading a participant information sheet. And they actually are promised anonymity and confidentialness. So do they now want to disclose themselves as people who are involved in the participation, in the work focus group or co-design? Our experience is that has never happened. I have done many co-design workshops, and this issue never came up, that they wanted to be co-authors. The only possibility was the organizing team who was helping us organize the co-design workshops. Some of them showed interest, but again, that's rare. It's rare.
Yeah. It's also quite tricky when some people might want to be acknowledged and other people don't. And then some people's names end up getting omitted from any material, and then it seems as if they didn't contribute. So it is quite a fraught area and certainly worthy of further discussion. Very last question. How do you convince your stakeholders or sponsors that co-design can generate the right insights for their needs? So how do you pitch this for initial funding? How do you convince them that those insights can lead to tangible outcomes?
So the first thing is that we will never promise, all this co-design is gonna generate the insights are gonna benefit them. So what we're looking for is actually, as a society, as a community at large. So we're gonna come up with the solutions that gonna have the consensus and the support and buy-ins from the stakeholders. But in terms of who is coming in, and that's why, probably we work with a lot of NGOs and governments. I think the interests are still aligned. But I think that's the kind of promise we can not deliver. But in terms of how to pitch the idea, I think the key number one here is like we're going to have a strong customer stakeholder buy-in and likely improve the participation and engagement just because the idea has been tested with all the stakeholders. And second one is we're going to, because of the whole co-design process, the idea will be very polished. And sometimes, again, from a marketing perspective, we're going to give them the A/B testing. We're going to give you all these campaign materials, and it's already designed by graphic designers. So we're going to have the market-ready solutions out there. So it's going to be a lot of, I would say, a step ahead in terms of saving a cost for this pilot testing. I think that's another way we're pitching the ideas for.
My sense of the funding landscape is that you almost have to justify if you're not doing co-design. I think a lot of funders
I was going to say
are expecting it in your, in any sort of intervention development.
Yeah, I think it is now popular. So I don't think we have to sell the idea anymore. I think that the issue is keeping up with the demand.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, that is it for all the questions. Thank you so much for staying back, Samir and Bo, and thank you to all our attendees for the excellent questions.